Hi everyone, I'm Matthew Lloyd of DC Comics News, and I'm happy to be joined today by Marco Santucci, artist on DC's Green Lantern. Marco, welcome and thanks so much for sitting down and talking to me today. Just before we started the recording, you were telling me what you're working on right now. Would you mind sharing with everyone what you were telling me about your current issue you're finishing up?
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for hosting me. Okay, well, at the moment I've just finished issue number 9 of Green Lantern. Actually, I just finished the layout part of that issue because for this issue I'm working with my wife, Maria Laura Santu, that basically is working on my layout, and she is doing the finisher part. So a part of the pencils, a part of the inks. So this is one of the few times where we work together on the same projects, because usually we do the same job but on different projects. But for this time, with a great pleasure, I have to say, we are working on the same project, on the same book, and it's fantastic for me. It's fantastic. So for on the next week, I start working on issue number 10 on Green Lantern, and I can't wait to start. Obviously, can't wait.
Well, I'm sure everyone's glad to know that you're working ahead, and we're going to get some more stuff with you on Green Lantern. I know I am. So, Marco, you're in Italy. You're in Cortona.
Yeah.
How did you begin your professional career, and how did you first break in with comics?
Okay. Well, my career started in 1995, actually, and it started obviously in Italy. For at the beginning with little publishers here in Italy, and then I worked for several years for the biggest publisher here in Italy, that is Sergio Bonelli Editore. Is the most famous publisher of comics in Italy, and they publish comics of different genre, like Western comics, horror comics, adventure in general comics. And I worked for many years for them, and I worked on series like Mr. No, Tex, that is the most famous comics here in Italy, is a Western comics. And then I worked on Dampir, that is instead is a vampire horror comics. In 2008, I contacted Marvel Comics. I sent them some of my test pages, a portfolio, and they liked that. They liked it, and they asked me to work on my favorite character, that is Spider-Man. It was Spider-Man. And I have been so lucky to work on that, and I worked so for some years for Marvel Comics. In the meantime, I still was working for Italy for Sergio Bonelli. So I was working between two publishers in that period, and for some years. It's gone in this way. After that, I worked for France. I worked for Italy again, and in 2016, I started working for DC Comics. I remember that my first work was a story with Yannick Paquette on Superman and Wonder Woman, a short story. I had the great pleasure to work on the Yannick Paquette layouts. Yannick introduced me to DC Comics. Actually, I have to say thanks so much, Yannick, for this. And after that, I worked on a Superman story, and I started to work on Injustice, the Injustice series. And after that, I jumped from a project to another, and until now, in the recent times, when I worked on Green Lantern. Actually, this is the second time that I'm working on Green Lantern, because I worked on Green Lanterns in 2018, but this is my first time on the new series, and it's fantastic, I have to say.
That's awesome. Was it difficult working for multiple companies in multiple countries at the time when you
Yeah,
were doing that? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
that's
Yeah, sometimes it's complicated because every company, every publisher have different way to work. But I have to say, from Italy to USA, that there is a big difference in the workflow production. Because, for example, in Italy we have books that are about 100 pages, okay, and to do a book, you spend about 6, 7, 8 months, because obviously you can't do a book in 1 month. And the production, so it's longer, and the time is not so tight. At least until when I worked for Italy, it wasn't so tight. For the American market, obviously, it's different. The deadlines are tighter, absolutely, because obviously you have to do one book for every month, so it's different. But I have to say that it's fantastic, because you have so much freedom in working on pages. For me, I love working for American comics, for DC Comics in particular, because they gave me a big freedom in my work. Instead, for example, in Italy, it was different, because you have to stay, for example, inside the same layout all the time. In Italy, for example, the comics are made with 3 strips every page, split in 2 or 3 panels every strip. So you have to maintain that layout all the time. In USA, for the American market, you can change the layout when how you want. So in the way you want. So I think that artistically is better. Is better, to tell you that.
I
So
I didn't know that. That's interesting that it's very formatted and regimented there with the layout. I wouldn't have thought that. It's almost
yeah,
like an old newspaper strip where you had to do it the same way because you only had that limited space. I'm surprised to hear that, but
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
interesting to know.
Yeah, the other big difference is that usually in Italy the comics are in black and white, so you don't have the help of the colorist. And from the point of view of the skills and the technical part that you have to follow, I think that from this point of view, making comics in Italy could be total. It's harder, because you don't have the color that sometimes helps you with the page. You have to do everything, because it's everything made in black and white, and the basics of the drawings are in black and white. So you have to do a strong work in black and white, otherwise it doesn't work for the market. USA, the good part is that sometimes the colors can help you to make the page looks better. Sometimes not. It's not. It doesn't work all the time, but if the colorist is good, it works very well.
I I I understand what you mean. I mean, uh there's some things that you can look at and in black and white it's looks great and uh other times, it seems like it's missing something
Yeah,
without the
yeah,
color. But if you know you're working in black and white, uh you can add more shading and black areas to
yeah.
enhance the depth and the mood and the tone and all that.
Exactly.
Whereas with color,
Exactly.
they're going to add that
Yeah,
sometimes. It'll help you, right?
yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Well, what would you tell an aspiring artist who wanted to be a comics professional? What would you tell them to do?
Okay. Well, what I can tell, I can say that if a young boy or young girl want to do this work, I have to say that he needs to know that it will be really difficult because and so they are to be really focused on the target because this is a work where you don't have a specific time when to work, as I said before, but you have to you have to be focused on the deadline. You have to be focused on the obtain a specific quality in a tight time sometimes, and sometimes you have to be able to accept the critics to your work. I think that this is one of the most difficult things for the people that want to do this work. Sometimes there are some people that are very good in drawing, but they are good in drawing until they do what they like to do. But not always you can draw whatever you want. Actually, never, because you have to follow a script. So you have to enter in this state of mind. You have to use your skills, your drawing skills, your storytelling skills to to tell a story that someone else has written. So you have to use two skills for using them so on the work of someone else, and sometimes it's difficult. And obviously you can wait for the inspiration to work. Yes, we are artists, obviously we are artists, but we are commercial artists, so you have to be able to wake up every morning and be ready to work. No waiting for the inspiration. You have to work, absolutely. And if you accept these facts, you can do this work. But I think that the most important part is the accepting the criticism on your work, because you have to accept them like something that help you to improve your work, to improve your render, to improve your skills, not like something that want to destroy you. That's the point. In fact, sometimes there are some editors that make portfolio reviews that sometimes find fantastic artists, but when they try to say, hey, this is fantastic, but this thing should be better for this reason, there are people that can accept that. There is people that is not able to accept that, and that's make a huge difference between someone that can do this work and someone that can't do this work.
I guess there's a big break between being able to draw and being able to tell stories through drawings.
Even that is a big difference, because this work is not a matter of only drawing a good thing, a good looking thing. You have to be able to tell a story. You have to have very clear in your mind the sense of storytelling. I have to say that since when I was a child, I remember that I liked to draw, but my draw was always focused on tells a story instead of making only a good draw. So for me, it's something natural, I have to say. In fact, I'm a huge fan of movies, series, because I just like the way the way that I can say that I like the how you can tell a story with the images, and I really like that part of this work. Obviously, I think that you can see from my work. I like to be very refined, very specific, very realistic, but this is only a part of the work. I do that only because I want that the reader is really convinced to see something solid. But my first priority is the storytelling. I spend a lot of energy on doing the layout part because I want that the storytelling is very fluid. After that, I spend the other part of my energy to make that fast rogues uh, at their best when they will be inked. But my first priority is the storytelling, I have to say.
That's that's interesting to hear. I think when you start drawing, I mean, people that like to draw, they think probably of just liking to draw things and an image. Here's a picture of Batman doing something cool, as opposed to here's 6 panels telling part of a story of Batman doing something cool. It is a different approach. I was gonna say something about your work that always strikes me when I see it is that when you do spend time on the details of a particular character, I feel like you're rendering a real individual and not just, you know, a suggestion of a person. Like you'll see like the facial features like on Joe Malign or somebody that it feels like it's a real person that I'm looking at, even if it's not a real person you're working from. It has that aspects that make you think of a real person and not just a comic book drawing of a person. I think
Yeah,
it's a real nice. I really like that about your stuff.
thanks. Yeah, I like the realistic part of the, the comics. To tell you the truth, um, I I do that because I'm used to do that. I used to do that in the Italian comics because usually we work in a very realistic way. So for me, it's natural and normal to render these characters as realistic as possible. And and I have to say that since I am a big fan on Brian Hitch as an artist, I fallen in love when I saw his work on Ultimates. That for me is one of the best comics ever. Because to tell you the truth, I stopped to read American comics during the 90s. That's
Oh,
I have to say that in the 90s are not the best period of the American comics. And to tell you the truth, I stopped to read American comics in that period, but I restart to read American comics with Ultimates because I saw this series where the characters seem to real, like to see a movie,
yeah.
and I immediately felt in love with that kind of work. I remember that I thought incredible. I It's possible to do an American comics but a realistic approach. I have to say an European approach.
Okay.
And from that moment, I started to read American comics, and I tried to start to draw superheroes, but like if you see them on a movie instead of a comics in the classical way. So
Okay.
I really liked the fact that, for example, Brian each draw them, um, not like people, nude people with the skin colored like a costume.
Right. Right.
You can see the people with actual costumes with the let me find the word. In that comics, you can see the folds on the costumes. That's
Okay.
some
Right. Right.
because from some point of view could be a silly particular, but it's extremely important, because another thing that really hit me hard when I saw another artist of the American comics was the way Alex Ross drew the superheroes. Another artist, a total different artist, a painter, but someone that drew the comics, the characters in the American comics in a very realistic way. Another comics that really hit me hard was Marvel's or Kingdom Come from Alex Ross. It really impressed me, because it was like to see that heroes that once were inside the comics books, like something that came out from the comics book, became real. And for me it was amazing. And I try to do, in my limits, to do the same on the comics that I drew. I like to give a realistic touch to my characters. So, for example, for that specific characters, I tend to use, for example, the real faces. For example, for the face of Joe, I use Soneca Martin Green, the actress from Star Trek Discovery.
Oh, okay.
I use her like reference, because I like to be coherent. So if you want to be coherent and solid, you have to follow a specific direction. So if you want to show a character with a specific aspect, with a specific render, you have to follow probably a real person. And for Joe, Sonica is my biggest reference, for example.
That's really interesting. I wondered if you were looking at references, because I know that's something some artists do, especially going back to the golden age. There are, strip artists like Milton Caniff that would have models and they'd take pictures, or Alex Raymond too. Yeah. And there's that famous story of Russ Heath where he is actually every character in the story. All those references were his own, himself in the poses, and he actually drew every character and it's him.
Yeah, we do the same. I have to say that since I work with my wife in the same house, sometimes I take photos of her for my pages, and she takes photo of me for her pages, or the opposite. So we use a lot the references, because, as I said, is obviously drawing is an artistic thing, and you have to be free. You have to have the freedom to draw. But I think that to be real solid, you have to see something real, to have a good reference for that pose, for that, for example, for the folders of the clothes and everything. And after that, you have to be a sort of filter from the reality to the pages. Obviously, you have to filter what you see, but you have to start always from something real. And I think that there are artists that sometimes invent everything from their mind, but I think that at the end there's always something that you have seen or you are referring to do that specific characters or background or whatever. Obviously, you can do a building in the way you want, but the buildings are built in a specific way for a specific reason. So you can invent them from the zero. Okay, and the same
unless you're an architect, maybe.
yeah. So it's very important to using good references. It's not cheating, absolutely. It means doing a good work. And because if you have to tell a story that happens in the real world, you have to look at the real world. There's no way.
How did that go with when you were doing like westerns and stuff for Italian comics, did you have like a cowboy hat and the
Yeah,
same kind of clothes to have somebody wearing in order to get the
yeah,
general look?
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I learned a lot in how to use the references just working for Italy because, as I said before, in Italy we have normally we have more realistic comics. So there are stories that happens in the real world. So all the times I had to go to see how, for example, that specific city looks like, or sometimes that specific street looks like, because there are some writers here in Italy that are very pay a lot of attention about what you're drawing in that specific way, because they want to show at the best the maximum realism in the pages. So they want that you take photos, usually photos for that specific places, clothes, characters, and whatever. And so the references are very important, absolutely very important, because until when you do someone that is flying, you can use your imagination. But if you have to do someone that is speaking, for example, inside a bar or a pub or a restaurant, you have to look at the people that do the everyday things of the life. And I think for the reader is easier to see mistakes if he is watching something that he see in the everyday life. So you have to pay a lot of attention about the pose of the character, the places, the background, everything, because they are something that the people see all the time. So instead,
Right,
someone that
right.
fly, you can use more your imagination, obviously.
Sure, and I guess also when you're doing something regular like that, you have to make sure it looks real so that you capture whatever emotion
Yeah,
or aspect of drama you're trying to convey. Because
yeah,
if you don't have attention to those real details, it's just going to be generic looking heads talking, and it's not going to be interesting.
absolutely. In fact, sometimes also for the expression of the faces, for example, or also for the hands, for example, it's very important to have a reference. Sometimes we are lucky because now in the last 15, 20 years we have Google, and it became so easier to find references. So there's no excuse. You have to search your references, and if you don't find exactly what you want, you can always make a photo of yourself. I have tons of photos of me that I'm doing weird things, and my wife the same. So it's also a funny part of this work. Sometimes we have to do expressions or poses for using them as a reference. It's very important. It's the only way to make realistic what you are drawing, what are the emotion that you want to deliver to the reader.
Right, right, yeah, and with iPhones and mobile phones that have cameras, it's so much cheaper than in the old days when you had to hire a photographer and a model to do all
Yeah, it
that.
was terrible because I remember that when I was working in the 90s, it was terrible because when I wanted to make photos, I have to pay to use the classical camera and then go to the shop to develop them. But it was a nightmare. Now it's so easier to do that there is no excuse. You have to use a reference to work. For me, it's very important. Very important.
And that would have slowed down your time too. You couldn't take a picture and then draw that
Yeah,
scene next. You had to wait for had to get the film developed and all that stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's interesting. Well, that is a really fantastic insight about how you work. I don't know if I would have thought that much about references for some reason. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Uh, you can't draw something if you don't know what it looks like, and you can't create everything out of your head. Like you said, you can create something of someone flying, but
Yeah,
if they're in a particular pose or something, how does that fold of material look? How
yeah,
does that facial expression look to
yeah,
get it right and not look,
yeah,
goofy or
yeah,
just flat out incorrect? No one's jaw moves that way, something like that.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I think you've actually covered some of the questions I was going to ask with influences and your history with comics. So let's talk about Green Lantern, your current DC book. You've been on it since issue number one. You've been working with some other artists in the series. How do you find sharing the assignment in this way with each artist handling different parts of the issue?
Oh, for me, it's great, especially in Green Lantern because they make the structure of the book in the easier way from this point of view because they split the book essentially in two different storylines.
Yeah,
So every artist is working on his own part of the story, and this makes the work simpler because sometimes, for example, in this shoe on the shoe number 1 and 2, the storyline was only one storyline, and when I started, for example, issue 1, I only made about 8-9 pages, if I remember, and I made only a little part of it, and the other part was made by Dexter Soy. And I remember that it was difficult to work in that way because, when you are actually working on the book, maybe I'm doing a specific page in the middle of the story. And maybe I have to show some characters that maybe the other artist didn't draw yet. So you have to decide who draw these characters for first, how these characters should look like, and so sometimes you maybe can happen that you draw that character, and at some point the other artist drew the same characters but with different look. So you have to change again to make the two looks to do this to make
yeah.
them same. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one time, you and I aside were talking about Kelly in one of the issues, and you can tell when she's drawn by different artists. You guys all sort of had a different approach to her. I think mainly, big part was her hairstyle was different. And
Well, I think that you are referring to issue number 5, if I'm not wrong. Maybe when we another artist finished my part of the story because we were late because the script arrived late, so everything shifted on. And so at some point we haven't. So I wasn't able to close completely my part. So I have to give a part of my pages to another artist. And to tell you the truth, usually when I work on a book, just to avoiding coherence and coherency mistakes, I tend to do all the layouts and send all the layouts. So if there's something that doesn't work, we can change it on the layout step. And it would be better if the other artists do the same. But the problem is, I asked from the beginning, please send to me the pages page by page when you do that, because there could be some coherence problem between a part and another. But sometimes not all the artists do that. And I received the other artist pages all together at the end, and I start to say, look at that, Kelly have a different costume here. There are problems with the hair. There are problems with this panel. At some points, but at some point it's too late to change everything. So as you noticed, the Kelly's hairs are different because they are because the other artist maybe didn't see my pages, or I don't know why I sent them, but I don't know why. And he drew Kelly like the classical version, and it was a mistake, a coherence mistake, in fact. To tell you the truth, and sorry for my bad word, but I'm a pain in the ass when I speak about that, because I really care about the coherence of the story of the pages, and so all the time I tend to send my pages. Look, I do this, follow this, or please send to me the pages that you made, so I follow your pages. For me, it's very, very important. But sometimes there are some parts of the work that can do in that way, because we have to run all the time, so it's not always possible. So sorry for these little mistakes, guys. we working hard, sometimes we missed something. But told this, I have to say though that on the other books, besides issue 1, and that I did a part of the book, only a little part of the book. On issue 2, I did the half of the book, keeping drawing the story after the first part from Dexter Soy. It wasn't so terrible. From issue 3, the storyline was split in two, and I started working with Tom Running on the series, and Tom do his part and I do my part. So it became simpler, to tell you the truth, because I only do my part. So I have no problem with someone else that beside the issue 5 where someone else takes my part of the story. But I think that is good working with another artist, and I have to say that it's fantastic working with Tom, because he sends these pages all the time to show to the group what he's doing, like me. And for example, on issue 9, like I said, I'm working with my wife just because I want to have the control on my part. So since I did all the layouts of the issue, and she did all the inks, the work will be coherent and with a good quality. I can assure you, Maria Laura is doing a very great work on my layout, and I'm extremely happy of what she is doing on them. And as I said, I'm a big pain in the ass, so I'm always there to say, please do that in this way, do that. But she's very patient with me, and she's very talented. She's able to listen to me when I ask to do specific things. So it's a good way to work in this way.
That's really great. You can work together like that.
Yeah.
Not every relationship is good for working together, even if it's good for being married.
obviously you have to be able to split the personal part from the working part. We are very good in this in this way. We stay together from 2012. So in all these years we learn how to split the two parts. We working, as I said, in the same house in different studio, but in all these years we worked a lot on that, and it's fantastic. For example, when we travel for work, for the convention, for example, we are a very good team from this point of view. Absolutely very good team, and I'm very proud of what we are doing together in everything. So it's good.
You mentioned something about working on part of issue one with the Galactic Council section. You were telling me that was your section because early on they weren't crediting artists with specific pages. You just had all the names and stuff. Did you get to design any of those characters in that
in the
sequence?
double splash?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. You want to know if I draw completely the page or?
Oh, did you design the characters? The look of the characters? There are a lot
Well,
of characters. Did you get to design some of the characters yourself?
yeah.
And do you like that kind of aspect of the
Yeah.
job?
Okay. Well, actually, a big part of the characters that you see in the double splash and all the sequences are classical races and species of the DC universe. Jeffrey Thorne told me, please show these specific alien races. So he gave to me the list of the alien races that I have to draw, and sent to me all the references. I found on internet other references because I never satisfied all of the references. and I spend a lot of time doing all these aliens everywhere. A part of them is a poor invention of me, but a good part are real races in the DC universe because they were like little Easter eggs around the page. So I like to work in that way because, as I said before, I like to work on the references. I like to be very specific when I draw. And if I have a specific direction when I drew something, for me it's better because it's like to tell the story in the better way. So I was happy to follow all the directions that Jeffrey sent to me, and it was fantastic working on that double splash.
Cool. That's really cool. This current run is following after Morrison and Sharp's run, and before that, Robert Vendetti's run. Uh, your artistic contribution is clearly one of the reasons this has been such a great new series. Do you anticipate being on Green Lantern for a while? Is it something that's open-ended, or is it are you able to talk about that at all?
Oh, let me. Okay. Well, you want to know how much time I'll be on Green Lantern?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. To tell you the truth, I hope to be there for the longest time as possible, but I know that this story will be until about issue 12.
Okay.
So I don't know if once this story arc will be ends, I'll be there later. I don't know.
Okay.
I know that for sure I should be there until issue 12. I hope so. But another thing that is different, for example, for the USA comic market from the Italian comic market, is that the things change faster, much faster in the American comic. So obviously, I can say that to you, but I can't be sure at 100%. I hope so. Because to be there until at least until issue 12, and after that, I don't know what the DC Comics can give to me, but I hope to keep working for them, to keep working on Green Lantern or other characters, but. I have to say that I hope to be there until the end of this run, this storyline, and so it should be around issue 12 because if I'm not wrong, Jeffrey told that, so it shouldn't be a relation.
You mentioned Jeffrey. Does he
Yeah.
write to your strengths, or does he write to the strength of an artist in particular, or do you just get the script and have to sort of figure it out?
Mm. Okay. Do you want to know if Jeffrey is a very specific writer?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's very specific, very European. He have a very European way to write the scripts. Very specific. He don't use. We can say that he don't use the Marvel way to write the scripts. You know, when the writer write to you, in this page happened this. Do in your way. No, no. Every Jeffrey is very precise, very specific. He sent to you the references. Every page is split in specific numbers of panels. With every panel is a well described with the dialogues and everything. And to tell you the truth, I'm really happy of that because I prefer, as I said, to follow a lot what the writer tells to me, what the reference that he gives to me, because I like to do the work in a good way, in the best way. I'm not one of that artists that take the scripts and change everything, because I think that in that way maybe sometimes you can obtain a good looking page, but maybe not good storytelling sometimes. So yeah, I think that the artists have to follow the writer indications, because for first you have to keep in your mind the story. So it's very important to be sticked to the script. And Jeffrey is very good from this point of view.
That sort of appeals to your European
Yeah,
approach that you were talking about with
yeah,
I guess it balances it. You have the freedom to create some of the panel layouts and stuff as you would like, as opposed to the rigid format. But at the same time, you're adhering to what the writer's giving you pretty
yeah.
strictly.
Yeah. You know, you are like the director in a movie when you draw the pages. So, but you can take the scene from the point of view that you desire. But the most important thing is that you tell the story that the writer wants. So you can choose the point of view, but the story have to be that specific story. Have to happen that specific thing. So it's very important to follow the writer. Yeah.
That's very insightful. That is very insightful. Um, we've done a lot of talking about your method, which are some of the questions I had. That's awesome. Is there a character or project that you'd like to work with that you haven't, maybe in American comics, or even a European character that American audiences aren't familiar with? I know uh, I've been able to expand my own musical knowledge with stuff outside what I normally would with European stuff, but I'm still pretty unknowledgeable about a lot of European comics. So, is there something you'd like to work on, maybe American or European, you haven't?
Oh well, to tell you the truth, I'd like to work, for example, on Batman, on a Batman story. It would be great. Also on a Superman story. Maybe more Batman in this moment. I'd like to make. And I already worked on one of my favorite characters, that was Spider-Man, for example. But now I'd like to work on a Batman story. I'd really like to work on that character. Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Even if I like the science, the sci-fi, and these kind of things, but I have to say, working on Green Lantern satisfied a lot this aspect. So I'd like to work on something more, if you want, even more realistic, like, for example, Batman. Uh, but in general, I like to change from time to time the characters, the situation where I work, because it's very important, this aspect, because, for example, when I worked for Italy, I worked for 8 years on the same character, three
Oh,
years on another character, 5 years on another character, and I think that after 1 year, 2 years, that you worked always in the same characters, on the same backgrounds, on the same things, your inspiration run out because you can do that character in whatever pose you want, whatever situation you want, but at some point you start to repeat that, and that is not good for your creativity. It's important always to be to find new challenge for your artistic part, for your skills that make you evolve in your styles, in your skills and everything. So I what I like to do is always from time to time change and restart again with something new, with new emotions, with new challenge, with new stuff to draw.
I can see that. I mean, uh, actors that are in TV series after so long want to move on to something else to have variety and a new challenge.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the same way with drawing. If you're drawing in the same world with the same characters for a certain amount of time, you
Yeah,
feel like you've kind of done it before.
yeah, yeah,
Even if you enjoy it, you
yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. But I think that when you do something artistic, you need to change, to don't you do you don't have to stay still, because when you stay still, you start to go um,
backwards. You go
back
backwards. Yeah,
back
yeah. You
backward.
don't you don't go forward. Your craft
Exactly,
doesn't
exactly,
improve. It just stays
exactly what
where
I
it goes.
mean.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
Exactly.
totally got it. Your visual was perfect. That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
did you see storytelling?
You were falling off the drawing board.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you speak about art, if you stay still, as I said, you start to you never stay still. You start to go backward, always always forward, or is not a good thing. Absolutely, that's it. That's why it's important to change all the time what your projects, your characters, and everything, your techniques. I evolve, for example, my technique during the production of a Green Lantern, because I try to use, for example, a classical line art with black and white very strong. After that, I start to use the gray tones. After that, I don't know. I start to use something else. But I always try to find new ways to tell the story, to render these characters, to render these situations. And I think that in the following issue, you'll see that. You'll see that because
Okay,
I keep evolving my style.
that's great. That's great. That seems to lead into what I was going to ask next was, is there any original creator-owned project that you'd like to do someday? Do you think about that?
Okay, actually, I already worked on something like that. When I worked for France, I worked on a series. The name of the series was La Mandragore, and I created these characters with the writer of the series, and it was a two books series, a short series. In France is normal, and I have to say that I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed it, but uh, I don't know. I have no specific ideas in my mind because primarily I prefer to tell a story with the images instead of inventing one.
Okay.
But one day, if there will be the chance to create a new character with maybe a writer or something like that, I'd like to do that. But at the moment, I have no specific ideas or project. I really enjoy to I'm really enjoying to work on the characters that someone else invented. So for me, it's good. I already love the character where I'm working on, so it's good.
Do you have a favorite character in Green Lantern that you're working on right now? I mean, there's a lot of Green Lantern characters, and even your section of the book, it's uh, you get to draw Kelly and Simon and Sinestro, and I guess you've had a little bit of Jessica, I think, in your
Yeah.
section as well. Is there a particular character you'd like to do most?
Maybe it can be obvious, but to tell you the truth, my favorite one is Joe. And I have to say that also Sinestro. I noticed that a lot of people liked the way I drew Sinestro. In fact, I drew also the variant cover for issue 7 with the Sinestro, the black and white variant cover
Yeah,
with half
yeah.
buttons. And I have to say that I don't know why, but I love working on that character, on this evil character, but with this particular face, and I really love to render his face. So maybe Joe and Sinestro are my favorite ones.
You mentioned that variant cover, and I think I told you that I really liked that when I saw it. Unfortunately, my comic shop didn't have that variant cover, so I got to go out next week and try to get it from a different one.
Okay, okay.
But I remember the issue where Sinestro's laying in bed with
Yeah,
the two women. There was something about that opening and the way he was drawn that was really. I mean, it was that opening to that issue really pulled me in. It was just like it felt like there was just a little something special going on with
yeah.
Sinestro and that, and the way your images and the story were working together. It was you mentioned Sinestro, and I just thought I think there's something special with that bit there with Sinestro in particular. So good job.
Thank you, thank you. No, I really enjoyed to draw that part of the story. It was really fun. Yes.
Sinestro has been through so much. He started out as a villain, and then in more recent years, he's been an anti-hero. There's just so much to him that people have a real draw to him. I think his character is so complex.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I, when I drew him in the dialogue with Joe, I tried to work a lot on his facial expression, his way to act. It has been a challenge, but it has been really enjoyable, I have to say. So he is a very interesting character to draw, absolutely.
Um, when I let everybody at the DC Comics News team know I was going to interview you, I was able to get a couple questions
Yeah.
from some of them. I'm going to ask also. Uh, so, do you remember the first time you saw your work in print and how you felt?
Usually, I think that everyone that do this work remember that moment, and it was weird. If I have to tell you the truth, because you know it's weird to see on a book something mm, something that you are working on for a long time. Because at the beginning I wasn't fast. I wasn't fast. So you spend a lot of days on a page, maybe, and then you see that page printed in a little format, and for the first time with the dialogues, the balloons, and the effects and everything, and it was, I don't know, weird, but obviously it's a good sensation, a good feeling, absolutely. And I was really proud to see that. But at that point, I was already thinking about to the next thing to do. So it's weird because this thing I think happens all the time when you do this work. You spend a lot of days, hours on a page or a series of pages, and then after 20 days you see them printed in a comics book. But when you open the comic book, at least for me, it's already something old, and they already doing something else. So I have no time to think about too much about that. I have to think more to what I'm doing that moment.
How do you feel about the influx of European artists into mainstream American comics? DC in particular has quite a few.
Well, I think that to tell you the truth, the European influences in the American comics are a good thing, because I think that in Europe we have a very good quality in the comics, because as I told you before, for example, in Italy, we are used to make comics in full black and white. So it means that the artists have to work completely the page, thinking about the depth of field of the panels and the images, using only the black and white. And this is a very strong school for an artist. In France, for example, they work also with the colors, sometimes made in the classical way, with the watercolors, for example, sometimes made with the Photoshop, but in the recent years. But even in France, in Belgium, have a strong school in comics. And also in England, for example, many of my favorite artists are in English artists. For example, Alan Davis, that is my main inspiration. Brian Hitch, Brian Boland, all these people came from England, and also from Italy. In Italy, for example, one of my strongest influence is Claudio Castellini. There are so many artists, but some of them are working only for Italy. For example, I'm a huge fan of the Claudio Villa, that is one of the main artists of the Tex series here in Italy. My master is Fabio Civitelli, that taught me a lot of stuff about this work. And there are, for example, other big names in the comics, USA comics industry that came from Italy are, for example, Gabriele Dell'Otto, Riccardo Federici, Simone Bianchi, that I have to thank for my arriving in Marvel, because he introduced me in Marvel. So
okay.
Yeah, so I have to say thank to Simone 1,000 of times. So,
mille grazie.
Yeah, mille grazie, exactly. And so there are so many artists that came from Europe and are working from the USA market, that I think they bring a lot of quality in the comics, American comics. Obviously, there are already quality, but I think a different way to make quality in the comics, to make them solid and good. And so for my feeling is very, very good. But I have to say that in the recent years, not always artists from Europe are very good artists. For example, there are a lot of really good artists from Brazil, from Philippines, for example. I think that is fantastic, this thing that we can work from every part of the world. And I met so many artists that came from so different parts of the work, and everyone brings to their experience, their inspiration in the American comics. Is a sort of a melting pot where every style influences each other. Okay, so it's very good from the point of view of the creativity. It's fantastic. I think that is fantastic. And I have to say that DC Comics have very good artists, especially in the recent years. DC is has a very good quality level. Quality level, I have to say.
Yeah, you mentioned other countries where artists are coming from in Brazil and the Philippines, and that's I wasn't even thinking about that when I asked the question. And you've got Vilcas Evely and Mateus Lopez and uh, from Brazil, and that's a good point too. It's interesting. It's there's so many artists. You mentioned so many artists, and there's so many good artists. It's hard to think of all the good ones because they all bring everyone has a unique style. It's
Yeah,
not like
yeah,
they're I don't know, I guess sometimes if you look back at a lot of old comics, there's sort of a standard look, but now there's so many great artists with so many unique styles that
yeah,
there's so many different things you can get out of it,
yeah,
when you read the
absolutely.
comics.
Yeah, yes, it's the same argument that we spoke before. In the art, if you stay still, you start to go backwards. But if there are so many different influences, approaches, and styles, you can't never stay still because all the time you see someone else that draw that specific character in a so different way, and it gives to you an inspiration to improve that specific part of your style. For example, obviously I started to, for example, to tell you the truth, when I started this work, my biggest influence, even if now it seems impossible, was Todd McFarlane. I started to draw comics because Todd McFarlane hit me in the early 90s with his Spider-Man. But at some point, I discovered that if I wanted to improve my style, my skills, and everything, I have to follow someone else more realistic, more classical, like, for example, John Buscema, Neil Adams, John Romita, very classical artists, but so different from example from Todd McFarlane. But I think that a little part of what I took from Todd McFarlane's style is still in my style. Okay, I don't know, it's a gay word, but sorry.
I'm gonna
So
look for that next time.
yeah, yeah. You have to think that I think that every artist can do something totally new. Every time is something that artist saw from someone else. It's like to build an house with the bricks, little bricks. Every bricks is an influence, and at some point, all these bricks mixed together start to create a new style, an apparently new style, because the totally new doesn't exist. I think I'm convinced of that, but the originality doesn't exist. The totally originality, everything that we see is already done by someone else in a similar way. So it's a matter of taking a part of this, a part of that, and put together, create something apparently originally. Okay, but the most important thing is that when the people see your work, say, "Oh, this is Olivier Coppel work. This is the Stuart Immonen work. This is," and obviously, the more your work is recognizable, the more your work is of a value. Obviously.
It's like music. There's only so many notes and so many chords. It's how you put
Yeah,
them together and how you build them up and how they interact, those different bits and pieces as opposed, yeah. No, it's people, I guess, want to be original and new, but
yeah,
it's I guess it's good to have that idea that you're taking from this and this and this to make something
yeah,
new as opposed to saying everything is brand new.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that another thing that I always say, remember the question that you made to me about what's my best advice I can do to an aspiring artist, is is that at the beginning you don't have to try to find your style, because it's useless. It's useless at the beginning. When you start to study how to do this work, you have to learn the basics, how to draw a correct anatomy, proportion, uh, perspective, composition, chiaroscuro, all this stuff that you can find in the classical artists. After that, you can start to take little part from there, from there, from there, put together, create your own style. But it's something that you can do thinking about that. It's something that came out naturally, because you constantly are exposed to the other people works. So you constantly absorb something from the others, from what you see, from what you read, from whatever. From your style at some point will come out automatically. So now think about your creating your style is useless. Leave leave your work go, and the style out.
That's more good. That's more good insight.
Yeah, yeah. And the most important thing is stay with the feet on ground. Absolutely. Never think I'm the biggest artist in the world. I oh they gave to me this character, so I am a big artist. No, sometimes it's because someone else can do that. So stay with on the ground. Stay on the ground, guys, because it's fantastic already working on this field. And sometimes when you make something that have a big success, is not because obviously depends from your skills, from your professionality, from your work and everything, but sometimes it's casual. I have to say that it's casual because sometimes there are some specific products or characters or books that I don't understand why the people loves them so much. I don't know. I don't know to tell you the truth. But sometimes if you are so lucky to be in that project, your career can go up immediately.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you are always the same that one moment before. So sometimes is the hard work, but sometimes it's casual. So I think that we have to simply keep working hard on the pages. That's the important
That
thing.
that's a really excellent point because you don't always know what you're doing. I mean, you know what you're doing, but
Yeah,
there's no way you can see what its impact is going to be. I
yeah,
mean, because there are plenty of characters and stories that I've seen and been like, yeah, I don't get that at all. I don't get that at all.
yeah,
But you just never know when you're going to do the next Watchmen or,
yeah,
the next Saga the Swamp Thing or the next,
yeah,
Dark Knight Returns that has
yes,
that kind of impact. You just don't know
yeah,
until it happens. And you look back and go, I was part of that.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And I to about that, another I have to say bad thing in the recent years is that with the social media, I think that they create a false impression about the works of the artist, because sometimes I think that everyone saw that sometimes you see on the socials some stuff that have so many likes, so many impressions, so many comments that is simply terrible. And you don't understand why. But I think that many times in the socials have a good uh, amount of likes on whatever, many times it's something that's extremely simple, because the people on the social tends to see the things very fast. So
Mm.
if what they see is very have a strong impact, immediately strong impact, they put like, for example. But sometimes if you put something that needs a second glance, it's too complicated. They keep scrolling. So don't put like. So, but maybe that thing is more complex, more. It's best. It's better. Is can teach to you something more. But the people don't look at it. So I think that in the recent years, there also this aspect, the influence of the socials in this market. Not always what this on the socials works actually is a good thing. Actually, the 90% of the times, no, it's not a good thing. And is not sure that what works on the socials works maybe on a books, on a real books in the sales and whatever. I have to also to say that sometimes there are artists that are able to create their own career using the socials and creating on their own public. And maybe it works also on the prints, but sometimes not. It depends from the kind of product that you are doing and everything. But I think that you don't have to judge your quality, your skills, and whatever from the number of followers or like you're having in that moment, because I don't think that is a good method to measure that. For me, this is very important.
That's really insightful. Also, you're making me think of music again. Music is another one of my passions besides comics, and the music I like for the most part is more complex. It's not stuff you're going to hear on the radio. It
Yeah,
takes more than one listen,
yeah,
sometimes multiple listens, and then maybe after 3 or 4 you go, then you start breaking it down and you start understanding it. I mean, I'm a musician myself, so it helps, but it's the same thing. It's like you go back and you look at different artists' work, and then you maybe the first time
yeah,
it's not so much, or you read somebody's review and go, they didn't like that, and then you read it and you slow down a little bit. There are a couple times recently in some reviews I've said, slow down, stop, look at this art. Don't
yeah,
just skim by it because you're trying to get to the story. Slow down because there's some really good stuff going on here with the visuals that you're going to miss.
yeah.
So yeah, I think you're exactly right. And social media, that 10% that's good is when it connects people that wouldn't otherwise normally be able to connect, and
Yeah.
you create you know a relationship that's positive as opposed to some of the negative interaction that happens. I think you're very correct.
Yeah. But obviously it's normal because the social media tends to take something, hit it very fast, and then throw it out very
Yeah.
fast. But I think that the things that really have a value stay still in the time. In the time. For example, you mentioned Watchmen. Watchmen came out in 1985, if I'm not wrong, and
Yeah.
we still speak about Watchmen. Obviously, we can't do Watchmen all the month, obviously, but neither we can make only things fast food thing. Well, I don't know if you got it, what I mean.
Yeah. No. Yeah, you can't just put stuff out quickly. You gotta.
Yeah. I think that a very good thing remain in the time, and obviously that's why sometimes I say that uh, there are different categories of artists. In my opinion, there are bad artists, there are good artists, there are a lot of good artists, and there are the masters.
Mm.
Obviously, the bad artists are the ones that, even if they try to insist on doing this work, can't improve their art. there are good artists that are a bigger part of the artists that work in this field, and I think that you can be a good artist when you start to be in this field for, I don't know, 10 years, 8 years, something like that. You start to be a professional good artist. After, I think that in my experience at least, I think that I really start to understand his work after more than 20 years I was doing that, because I think that in the first 8, 10 years that you are doing this work, you just start to create your own way to work. After that, you start to refine that way to work. Maybe after 20, even more. I work in the comics field since 1995, so there are about 26, 27 years. And I think that only now I start to find my way to do this work. Also, if I start to create new stuff, to find new way to work, but I think that only recently I really find my way to work. So I think that the artists that can be considered real masters are the ones that work on the comics field from 20, 30 years of work, because their style is solid, is coherent, is something that can give to you something to create something else. They can give to you inspiration, good references. For example, if every time I look to an Alan Davis page, when for example, I have no idea about how to draw a panel, sometimes I just flip an Alan Davis book and I get inspiration immediately. There are other artists that maybe in this moment are more famous than Alan Davis, that you can flip their books, but they can't give to you the same, because their work maybe is a good work, but is not so rich. It's not so rich from the point of view of the substance of the work.
Right.
Okay, I don't know if I am able to explain that in English.
No, that's exactly right. I totally got that. Yeah, there's more substance to what's going on. It's not just here it is. There's something deeper to it in the storytelling and the depiction.
In fact, sometimes a lot of people that want to do this work ask to me, what are the best artists to look at? And I started to show them the classical artists, like I said, like John Boucher, Manuel Adams. I don't know. For example, one of the new best artists that are in the comics field is Stuart Immonen. Stuart Immonen worked in this comics field from, I don't know, from 20 to 30 years. I don't know. I think that in the 90s he was already working and he was already a good artist. But now he became a real good artist, a real master. And every time, for example, I look at his pages, I find something interesting to take, and that makes him a master. For example, a modern master. Other artists that I follow, for example, are I don't know, if I want to draw in a very good way a woman, I can look at Adam Hughes. He's a god of the women. And at my back, I have a lot of volumes of different artists that can inspire me so much. I mentioned them before, but there are so many. But I have to say that Alan Davis is a perfect example of a big professional artist, a big master, because he worked in the comics field since the 80s, I think. And I think that he did great stories with a great storytelling, with a recognizable style. is fantastic, along with Mark Farmer that makes his pencils at the best. Absolutely. So um, I, I have to say that to the people that want to do this work, I always say, don't look to the artists that are famous now. Look to the artists that are masters, that are famous in the past, because their style are more solid than the new artists that are good, but maybe still not masters.
Right.
Is a
Right.
different thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
sorry for my my English so terrible, but I try to.
No, no. I think it was perfectly understandable. Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody's going to get that. Definitely. Definitely. Um, well, talking about masters and stuff, is there something that you've done that you'd like to be remembered by or are most proud of? Or do you think you have yet to create that?
Okay. Well, I think that my best thing is always the next one, because all the time I try to improve my work, as I said. But I have to say that recently I worked on, beside Green Lantern, I worked on a very interesting series, and I'm very proud of the work that came out on it. Is the Endless Winter miniseries,
Oh,
the
okay.
Justice League and the Endless Winter,
Yeah. Yeah.
and mm, it has been a very interesting project because my pages, or even if a little part of my pages, are in every volume of the series, and the best part of that project it was that I did something about superheroes, but at the same times it was something about the Vikings, so something historical. So
Okay.
the two things mixed has been something really special to draw, really special, because I take fantasy characters and put them in a historical context, and I really
Mm.
enjoy that because I put together the two things that I like, the superheroes and the reality, and to put together in something in a new mix, and um, I'm very proud of the final result because I like the project. I liked the final render. I liked to work on that on amazing with an amazing colorist like Arif Prianto that gave to my pages something more. I have to say something more, and it's
Okay.
not easy to find a colorist that can give to you a, an improvement to the pages. So I'm very proud of that project. And another project that I liked was the two Aquaman issues I worked last year. The ones with Aqualad,
Yeah.
Aqualad, and I really liked work on that two issues because they were something different. DC gave to me a good time, a good timing to work on the pages. So I spent all the time that I needed on that pages, making something at my best, and I'm very proud of that project, I have to say. But I hope to do something even better in the future. I'm never satisfied.
Oh, well, we're always striving for more, right?
Yeah.
Well, you've already said you hope to be on Green Lantern for a while, as long as you can right now. Is there something you know that you have coming up next that you can share with us, or is there? Are you just you're just knee deep in Green Lantern right now?
Okay. If I can share something about the next issues, you mean?
or no? Is there something beyond Green Lantern that you have planned, or are you just working on Green Lantern and you're
Not
working on Green Lantern until?
at the moment. I'm totally focused on Green Lantern series, and at the same time, I'm having fun with the covers of Aquaman Green Lantern miniseries that is coming out the next week. I don't remember when they can. The next days they should be come out the first issue, and they gave to me the covers. So I'm having fun with the covers, as I said, and I'm really enjoying working on the covers because they gives to me the chance to work on instead of a series of pages of work on only one image where I can put all my energy and creativity, and I'm doing them instead of using the classical line art, black and white. I'm doing them, um, painting them, actually painting them. So I'm really having fun with that because, as I said, you all the time I try to improve my skills, to find new way to work. So in the last year, in the last 2 years actually, I'm trying to study a lot the painting instead of only the classical drawings for the comics, and so I'm putting that part of my skills on the covers, and
Okay.
also on the original pages of Green Lantern, for example. I'm From time to time I try to insert some parts that are in part painted. For example, the gray tones of the backgrounds, the construct, the ring construct. For example, sometimes I tend to make
Yeah, yeah.
because I like to create something new, to create something new.
I think it's noticeable in the ring constructs. You can tell there's something different about it
Yeah,
when
because they are made in a different way. I have to say that um, I have to thank Mike Perkins that gave to me. Speaking of inspirations, Mike gave me a big inspiration from his point of view because we worked together on the Green Lanterns series in 2018. And when I saw his work, I have to make 3 books between his run. When I saw that he was doing the construct using the gray tones, I thought, wow, that's a great idea because usually the constructs are made like silhouettes with without shadows, and sometimes if the colorist catch perfectly what you want, can come out something good. But it's better if you give the best render to the construct already in black and white. So I create the shadows in the construct with the gray tones. So when the colorist go to color them, already know where is the light, where is the shadow, and it is simpler for the colorist to color them. And I think that the render is came out better.
wow, that's more good insight about your craft. I really appreciate that. So you're doing the Aquaman and Green Arrow covers, and you're doing Green Lantern. That so people can
Uh,
look forward to from you. Um, Now I did see on your website you have original art available. Is
yeah,
that
yeah,
right?
yeah. Because I for a period of my career, for a matter of deadlines and correction or whatever, when I worked for Italy, I worked on the pages in digital. But to tell you the truth, I hate it. I hate it because I am a classical artist. I like the paper, and I like the render of the ink on the paper. So the bigger part of my production is totally on paper, and I have my the remaining pages of my production on my website from my Italian, European productions of France, Italy, and also from the American part. I have almost all the originals of my books. Um, if the people is interested, they obviously can send to me a mail, and I can answer without problem, no problem.
I will make sure I link to your website in the notes
Oh,
for the
thank you,
interview, so people can contact you
yeah,
if they want to do that.
thank
um,
you.
if people want to find you on the internet or social media, how can they do that?
Okay. Simply, they can reach me searching for Marco Santucci or Marco Santucci Art on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They are the main social media that I use, and they obviously contact me there. A good thing that using the social media is that they can see on my personal profile or page on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. They can see not only the pages completely done, but sometimes I put some work in progress of my work. And I saw that many people likes when I made that little videos where I ink the character with a brush, because I think that the brush is one of the most fascinating tools in this work. Is still one of the most fascinating tools in this work. Is almost one of the most difficult to use, to tell you the truth, because if you use a pen, it's simpler. If you use a brush, it's total, absolutely, absolutely too difficult. But I think that the best work came out with the brush. So sometimes I try to show when I work with the brush on the pages or the work in progress of some panels without revealing nothing too much, because I can't obviously, but I like to show to the people that follow me what I'm working that on that moment, whatever. So they can find all this in my social media.
Those I gotta say that whenever I see videos of people uh, doing the work in progress stuff, it's always fascinating and insightful because we get this final product in the comic books that we read, but there's a real disconnect, I think, with what goes into that. And then you suddenly see this white background and this brush,
Yeah,
going over the, and you're like, and that turns into this comic I'm going to read in a couple months.
yeah,
It's a really
yeah,
neat aspect to it.
yeah. Fantastic.
Well, Marco, thank you so much for talking with me today. I had a really great time. You were very, very insightful with some of your observations and what you shared about your own work as well as your inspirations and stuff. I think there's a lot everyone can learn. I think it's even applicable outside the field of comics. I think you said a lot of things that are important just in life, especially keeping your feet grounded and don't letting yourself get ahead of yourself. Remember where you are, remember who you are, and hard work will pay off. And you
Yeah,
don't ever know when you're going to make that next Watchman or whatever your field of uh, expertise is, whether it's comics or music or in business or you're a restaurant manager.
yes, exactly. Thank you so much.